The Zephyrian military outpost buzzed with activity as the annual Galactic Defense Force training exercise began. Representatives from 12 different species had gathered on the remote moon of Kepler 7b, each bringing their finest weapons and most elite soldiers. The purpose was simple: demonstrate combat effectiveness and forge alliances that would strengthen the galaxy's defenses against the ever-present threat of the Void Reapers. Commander Vextar, a towering Zephyrian with crystalline blue skin and 4 muscular arms, surveyed the assembled forces with satisfaction. His people had dominated these exercises for the past 50 cycles, their plasma rifles and energy shields proving superior to most other technologies. The insectoid klaxons brought their bioengineered weapons that could adapt to any target. The reptilian saurians wielded graviton disruptors that could crush armor like paper. Even the peaceful Luminari had contributed their photon cannons, weapons of elegant destruction that could slice through starship hulls. Then there were the humans. Vextar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind as he watched the small delegation from Earth set up their equipment. There were only 3 of them: a grizzled veteran named Marcus Chen, a young woman called Sarah Rodriguez, and their commanding officer, Colonel James Harrison. They had arrived in a ship that looked ancient by galactic standards, its hull scarred and patched from countless battles. "Look at what the primitives brought," sneered Captain Theclon, a saurian whose scales shimmered with embedded technology. He gestured dismissively at the human weapons cache. "Are those projectile weapons?" The other species representatives gathered around, their various forms of laughter creating a cacophony of alien sounds. The humans had indeed brought projectile weapons, but they looked nothing like the sleek energy weapons that dominated galactic warfare. Instead, they resembled crude metal tubes with wooden stocks and simple mechanical components. "That one appears to be some sort of chemical propulsion device," observed Dr. Kilnara, the Luminari's chief scientist. Her ethereal form flickered with curiosity as she examined the human equipment from a distance. "The metallurgy seems primitive, almost archaic." Marcus Chen, his weathered face impassive, continued cleaning what appeared to be an ancient rifle. The weapon had clearly seen decades of use, its wooden stock worn smooth by countless hands. Strange markings were etched into the metal, symbols that none of the aliens could decipher, but that spoke of battles fought on distant worlds under foreign stars. "Sergeant Chen," Colonel Harrison called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had led soldiers through hell and back. "Show them the M1903. Chen nodded and lifted the rifle, its weight familiar and comforting in his hands. The weapon was over 400 years old, a relic from Earth's bloody history of warfare, but it had been lovingly maintained and carefully preserved. The Springfield rifle had once been the backbone of human infantry, a tool that had shaped the course of wars and the destiny of nations. "This is a Springfield M1903 rifle," Chen announced to the gathering of alien soldiers. "Designed in 1903, manufactured until 1957. Fires a 30 .06 caliber round at approximately 2,800 feet per second." The aliens exchanged glances that conveyed universal skepticism. Captain Theclon's translator device struggled to convert the archaic human measurements, finally settling on galactic standard units that made the weapon's specifications seem even more laughable. "You're telling us," Theclon said, his voice dripping with condescension, "that you've brought a weapon that's over half a millennium old to compete against our advanced technology?" "That's correct," Chen replied without emotion. The klaxon representative, a chittering creature named Hive Mind Unit 7, approached with its bioscanner extended. "The projectile velocity is insufficient to penetrate modern armor. The energy output is negligible compared to plasma-based weapons. The firing rate is manually operated and thus severely limited. This weapon is obsolete by several centuries of technological advancement." Commander Vextar activated his combat suit's analysis protocols, scanning the human weapons with sensors that could detect atomic-level composition. The results confirmed what visual inspection had already suggested. These were primitive kinetic weapons that relied on chemical explosives to propel metal projectiles. They belonged in a museum, not on a battlefield. "Perhaps you misunderstood the nature of this exercise," Vextar said, his tone patronizing. "We're here to test combat effectiveness against simulated Void Reaper forces. Your historical artifacts will be of little use against energy shields and adaptive armor." The other aliens murmured agreement, their various species united in their amusement at human backward thinking. The Luminari whispered among themselves in tones of pure light, while the Klaxons communicated through pheromone releases that roughly translated to galactic standard as expressions of pity mixed with bewilderment. Sarah Rodriguez, who had been quietly assembling something that looked like a telescope mounted on a tripod, glanced up from her work. "We appreciate your concern," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "but we're confident in our equipment." "Confident?" laughed a Centaurian officer whose cybernetic implants glowed with processing power. "Young human, our weapons can vaporize targets from orbital distances. Our armor can withstand direct hits from fusion bombs. What could your ancient projectile launchers possibly accomplish against such technology?" Colonel Harrison stepped forward, his bearing radiating the calm confidence of a soldier who had seen more combat than most of these beings could imagine. "I understand your skepticism. Human weapons may seem primitive compared to your energy-based systems, but there's something you need to understand about human warfare." He paused, letting his words sink in as he surveyed the gathering of alien military representatives. "We've been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. Every human weapon represents thousands of years of refinement, of learning how to kill efficiently and effectively. We didn't leap straight to energy weapons because we perfected projectile technology first." The aliens continued to chuckle among themselves, clearly unconvinced by the colonel's words. They had seen human military records, knew about the species' violent history. But violence without proper technology was just primitive brutality, hardly suitable for modern galactic warfare. "Your weapons fire metal slugs," pointed out the Saurian captain. "Our energy shields can deflect such projectiles with minimal power drain. Even if they somehow penetrated our defenses, the damage would be localized and easily repaired by our nanomedicine systems." Chen finished his weapon inspection and looked up at the assembled aliens. "You're probably right about the rifle," he said quietly. "It's old, and it fires simple bullets. Against your shields and armor, it wouldn't do much damage." The aliens nodded smugly, pleased that the human had finally acknowledged reality. "But," Chen continued, "we didn't just bring rifles." Rodriguez stood up from her work, revealing what she had been assembling. It looked like a larger version of the telescope she had been working with, but with a distinctly more sinister purpose. The device was clearly a weapon, though its design seemed almost comically oversized compared to the sleek energy weapons the other species favored. "That's a Carl Gustav M4 recoilless rifle," Colonel Harrison explained. "It fires 84mm high-explosive anti-tank rounds. We also brought some special ammunition that our weapons designers have been working on." Dr. Kilnara's luminous form flickered with interest. "Anti-tank? What is a tank?" "Heavily armored ground vehicles," Harrison replied. "We designed these weapons specifically to destroy things that are heavily armored and well protected." Commander Vextar's four arms crossed skeptically. "The projectile size is impressive, I'll grant you that. But it's still a kinetic weapon. Our shields are specifically designed to deflect physical projectiles while allowing energy weapons to partially penetrate. Your large bullets will simply bounce off harmlessly." "We'll see," said Rodriguez, her voice carrying a note of anticipation that made some of the aliens shift uncomfortably. The training exercise was scheduled to begin in one standard galactic hour, with each species demonstrating their weapons against a series of progressively more challenging targets. The first round would involve standard combat scenarios, destroying enemy positions, neutralizing armored threats, and demonstrating accuracy and rate of fire. As the aliens dispersed to prepare their weapons, many continued to joke about the human equipment. The Klaxons released pheromones that translated roughly as quaint and nostalgic. The Saurians exchanged predictions about how quickly the human weapons would prove ineffective. Even the normally reserved Luminari allowed themselves expressions of gentle amusement. The humans, meanwhile, quietly went about their preparations. Chen disassembled and reassembled his rifle with practiced efficiency, checking every component with the care of someone whose life had often depended on his weapon's reliability. Rodriguez calibrated her targeting systems and ran diagnostics on the recoilless rifle's components. Colonel Harrison reviewed their ammunition selection, paying particular attention to several rounds that bore markings indicating experimental munitions. As the preparation time drew to a close, the various species gathered at the firing range. The targets had been set up according to galactic standard specifications: energy shield generators, adaptive armor plating, and mock defensive positions that mimicked Void Reaper installations. The challenges were designed to test not just raw destructive power, but accuracy, adaptability, and tactical thinking. The Zephyrians went first, their plasma rifles crackling with contained energy. Vextar's 4 arms allowed him to wield 2 weapons simultaneously, creating a devastating crossfire that systematically dismantled the target array. The plasma bolts burned through the air with brilliant blue light, each impact creating explosions of superheated metal and vaporized components. The Klaxons followed with their bioweapons, creatures that were part projectile and part living organism. The weapons adapted mid-flight, analyzing their targets and modifying their attack patterns accordingly. Armor plating that had resisted the plasma fire found itself eaten away by designer acids and molecular disruptors. The luminary demonstration was a thing of beauty, their photon cannons creating lance-like beams of pure light that sliced through targets with surgical precision. The Saurians showed off their graviton disruptors, weapons that created localized gravity wells capable of crushing armored vehicles into compact spheres of twisted metal. Each demonstration was met with appreciative murmurs from the other species. The technology was impressive, the destructive capability undeniable, and the tactical applications clearly sophisticated. Then, it was humanity's turn. Marcus Chen stepped up to the firing line with his Springfield rifle, the ancient weapon looking almost comically inadequate compared to what had come before. The aliens watched with barely concealed amusement as the old soldier took aim at the first target, an energy shield generator identical to those that had been systematically destroyed by the other species' weapons. The rifle cracked once, a sharp sound that seemed almost pathetic after the thunderous displays of energy weapons. The bullet struck the shield generator's protective barrier and bounced off harmlessly, exactly as the aliens had predicted. "As expected," murmured Captain Thecklon. "The primitive kinetic projectile is completely ineffective against modern defensive systems." Chen nodded calmly and set the rifle aside. "Rodriguez, you're up." The young woman stepped forward with the Carl Gustaf, the weapon looking almost too large for her slight frame. She selected a round from their ammunition supply, this one marked with yellow warning stripes and symbols that none of the aliens recognized. "What type of projectile is that?" asked Dr. Kilnara, her scientific curiosity overriding her amusement. "Experimental munition," Rodriguez replied as she loaded the round. "Something our weapons designers call a shield buster." The aliens exchanged glances of renewed skepticism. Human weapons technology was centuries behind galactic standards. The idea that they could have developed something effective against energy shields seemed laughable. Rodriguez took aim at the same shield generator that had easily defeated Chen's rifle. The recoilless rifle bucked against her shoulder as she fired, sending a projectile streaking toward the target with a sound like tearing fabric. What happened next would haunt the nightmares of every alien present for cycles to come. The projectile struck the energy shield and, instead of bouncing off as expected, seemed to phase through it entirely. The shield generator's defensive barrier flickered once, twice, then collapsed completely. The round continued its trajectory and slammed into the generator itself, creating an explosion that sent twisted metal fragments flying in all directions. Absolute silence fell over the firing range. Every alien present stared at the smoking crater where the shield generator had been, their various neural processes struggling to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Commander Vextar was the first to find his voice. "How?" he demanded, his forearms gesturing at the destroyed target. "Our sensors indicated that the shield was functioning at full capacity. Energy barriers don't simply fail when struck by kinetic projectiles." Colonel Harrison stepped forward, his expression revealing nothing. "Human weapons engineers have had a long time to study the problem of defeating defensive systems. We may be behind you in energy weapon technology, but we understand physics just fine." Dr. Kilnara's ethereal form pulsed with agitation. "That's impossible. The fundamental principles of energy shield generation create an impenetrable barrier to physical matter. No kinetic projectile should be able to penetrate such defenses." "You're thinking in terms of normal kinetic projectiles," Rodriguez said as she loaded another experimental round. This one was marked with red warning stripes and bore symbols that seemed to shift and writhe when viewed directly. "But humans have been dealing with armor for thousands of years. Every time someone builds better armor, we build better ways to punch through it." Captain Thecklon activated his suit's analysis protocols, scanning the area where the shield generator had been destroyed. "The energy readings make no sense," he reported, his reptilian features twisted with confusion. "There are trace elements here that don't match any known explosive compounds. The molecular structure of the debris suggests exposure to some form of exotic matter." The second target was a mock Void Reaper bunker, constructed from the same adaptive armor that had made the alien raiders nearly invincible in previous encounters. The material could adjust its molecular structure in real time, becoming harder or softer as needed to absorb or deflect different types of attacks. It had withstood direct hits from ship-mounted weapons. Rodriguez aimed the Carl Gustaf at the bunker and fired. The red-striped round streaked through the air with a sound like reality tearing at the seams. When it struck the adaptive armor, something fundamentally wrong happened to the laws of physics in that localized area. The armor tried to adapt, its molecular structure shifting and flowing as it attempted to find the optimal configuration to resist the attack. But the projectile seemed to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously, forcing the adaptive material to respond to contradictory requirements. The armor's artificial intelligence became locked in an infinite loop, trying to counter an attack that shouldn't have been possible. The bunker folded in on itself like origami made of steel and exotic matter, creating a perfect sphere approximately 3 meters in diameter. Then it exploded outward in a shower of metallic fragments that defied several fundamental laws of thermodynamics. "Sweet, merciful void," whispered Hivemind Unit 7, its insectoid form trembling with what could only be described as existential terror. "What manner of weapon creates such effects?" "Trade secret," Harrison replied with a slight smile. "Let's just say that human weapons designers have been very creative in their approach to the problem of defeating advanced defensive systems." The third target was a simulated Void Reaper command ship, complete with overlapping energy shields, adaptive armor, and point defense systems that could track and destroy incoming projectiles. It was considered the ultimate test of any weapon system, as it combined every known form of defensive technology into a single, nearly impregnable target. Rodriguez selected a third experimental round, this one black as the void between stars and marked with warning symbols that seemed to absorb light. Even the aliens' advanced sensors couldn't penetrate whatever material the projectile was made from. "I strongly recommend that everyone step back," she said as she loaded the round. "This one has a larger blast radius than the others." The aliens, their confidence thoroughly shattered by the previous demonstrations, quickly moved to what they hoped was a safe distance. Some activated personal shields or defensive systems, while others retreated to their ships and observed through long-range sensors. Rodriguez took careful aim at the mock command ship and fired. The black projectile moved through the air like a hole in space itself, leaving a trail of distorted light and twisted physics in its wake. The point defense systems attempted to track it, but their targeting computers couldn't lock on to something that their sensors insisted didn't exist. The projectile passed through the first energy shield as if it wasn't there, phased partially through the second shield while simultaneously existing on both sides of the barrier, and struck the adaptive armor with the force of a small star going supernova. The explosion was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. It wasn't just destructive, it was aggressive in its destruction, reaching out with tendrils of impossible energy that grabbed onto nearby matter and systematically disassembled it at the subatomic level. The mock command ship simply ceased to exist, along with a perfect sphere of everything else within a 50-meter radius. When the light faded and their sensors could function again, the aliens found themselves staring at a perfectly smooth crater that seemed to have been carved out of reality itself. The edges of the crater showed signs of molecular reorganization that violated everything they thought they knew about physics and engineering. Commander Vexitar's voice was barely a whisper when he finally spoke. "How long have humans been developing these weapons?" "Which ones?" Harrison asked casually. "The basic concepts go back about 70 years. The practical applications have been in development for the last 30. We've been field testing them against Void Reaper incursions for the past 5. Dr. Kilnara's form flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among her people. "You've been using experimental weapons against live Void Reaper forces. The danger to your own personnel must be enormous." "Some risks are worth taking," Chen said quietly, "especially when the alternative is watching your homeworld get consumed by an enemy that conventional weapons can't touch." The revelation that humans had been secretly engaging Void Reaper forces sent shockwaves through the assembled representatives. The Void Reapers were considered the most dangerous threat in the galaxy, entities from outside normal spacetime that consumed entire star systems for reasons no one understood. Most species had only survived encounters with them by running away or hiding. "You're telling us," Captain Thecalon said slowly, "that your species has been actively hunting Void Reapers with these reality-breaking weapons?" "Someone has to," Rodriguez replied as she began disassembling the Carl Gustaf. "They're not going to stop consuming worlds just because we ask nicely. And your energy weapons, impressive as they are, have proven largely ineffective against Void Reaper technology." Hivemind Unit 7 clicked its mandibles in rapid succession, a sign of intense cognitive processing. "Our records indicate that Void Reaper entities are partially extra-dimensional, existing across multiple layers of reality simultaneously. Conventional weapons cannot affect them because they can simply phase into dimensions where the attack doesn't exist." "Exactly," Harrison nodded. "That's why we had to develop weapons that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. If something can hide in parallel realities, you need ammunition that can chase it through all of them." The implications were staggering. Humans had not only figured out how to create multidimensional weapons, but had been successfully deploying them against the galaxy's most feared enemy. It explained why Void Reaper incursions into human space had become increasingly rare over the past few years. a phenomenon that other species had attributed to luck or the aliens' strange preference for certain types of star systems. Commander Vextar activated his communication systems, preparing to file an urgent report with Zephyrian Command. We need to discuss this development immediately. If humans have achieved success against Void Reaper forces, this changes everything about our defensive strategies. Hold on, Harrison said, raising a hand. We're not done with the demonstration yet. The aliens turned to stare at him in disbelief. After watching weapons that violated physics destroy targets that were supposed to be indestructible, what else could the humans possibly have to show? Those were just our standard anti-armor munitions, Rodriguez explained as she opened another equipment case. We brought something special for the final demonstration. Inside the case was something that defied easy description. It looked like a weapon, but its geometry seemed to shift depending on the angle from which it was viewed. The device appeared to be constructed from materials that existed in more than 3 dimensions, creating optical illusions that made the aliens' visual processing systems struggle to maintain coherence. What in the name of all creation is that thing? Dr. Kilnera breathed, her luminous form pulsing with colors that indicated deep unease. We call it the Marv, Chen said with the tone of someone discussing the weather. Multi-dimensional anti-reality violation device, specifically designed for dealing with entities that don't follow normal physics. The weapon was clearly far beyond anything the other species had developed. Its very existence suggested that human understanding of multi-dimensional physics had progressed to levels that made their own technology look primitive. The roles had been completely reversed in the span of a single demonstration. The targeting system is a bit complex, Rodriguez admitted as she began setting up the Marvi. We need to calculate trajectory across 17 different dimensional layers simultaneously. Plus, we have to make sure the ammunition doesn't accidentally erase anything we want to keep existing. Captain Theclon's scales had shifted to colors indicating extreme stress. Erase from existence? Are you saying that weapon can completely remove targets from reality? Only partially, Harrison clarified. Complete erasure is still theoretical. The Marvi just removes targets from the specific dimensional layers where they're causing problems. Very clean, very precise, minimal collateral damage to local space-time. The casual way the humans discussed reality-altering weapons sent chills through every alien present. These beings talked about manipulating the fundamental structure of the universe the way other species discussed ammunition types. As Rodriguez completed the weapon's setup, she turned to address the gathered representatives. For safety reasons, we're going to target something that's already partially removed from normal space-time. There's a piece of Void Reaper technology buried about 3 kilometers below the surface. Our sensors detected it when we arrived. The aliens immediately activated their own scanning systems, searching for the threat that the humans had apparently detected without any of them noticing. Deep underground, their sensors finally located what could only be described as a cancer in reality itself, a fragment of Void Reaper machinery that was slowly consuming the moon's core from the inside out. How long has that been there? Vexitar demanded, his 4 arms working frantically at his control systems. Based on the consumption rate, probably about 2 standard years, Chen replied. It would have completely destabilized this moon's orbit within another 6 months. We figured you'd want us to deal with it while we were here. The revelation that they had all been standing on a time bomb for the duration of the exercise added another layer of shock to an already overwhelming situation. The Void Reaper fragment was exactly the kind of threat that had destroyed entire star systems, and the humans had detected and prepared to eliminate it as casually as they might deal with a training target. Rodriguez made final adjustments to the Marva's targeting system, her fingers dancing over controls that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human hands should have been able to manipulate. The weapon hummed with barely contained energies that made reality itself seem unstable in the immediate vicinity. Everyone might want to close their eyes for this one, she advised. Multi-dimensional explosions can cause temporary perception disorders in species that aren't used to them. The aliens hastily activated visual filters and protective systems, though they had no idea if such measures would be effective against weapons that operated on principles they didn't understand. As they watched through heavily shielded sensors, Rodriguez took aim at a point deep underground and fired the Marv. What happened next would require new branches of physics to properly explain. The Marv's projectile didn't travel through normal space. Instead, it carved a path through 17 different dimensional layers simultaneously, leaving a tunnel in reality that allowed glimpses into parallel universes where the laws of physics operated under completely different rules. The aliens caught fragmentary glimpses of worlds where gravity flowed upward, where time moved backward, and where the speed of light was negotiable. Deep underground, the Void Reaper fragment suddenly found itself under attack from directions that didn't exist in conventional three-dimensional space. The alien machinery, designed to exist partially outside normal reality as a defense mechanism, discovered that humans had found ways to attack things, regardless of which dimensions they occupied. The explosion, when it came, was more of an implosion that turned itself inside out and then sideways through angles that violated geometry. The Void Reaper fragment simply stopped existing, along with the corrupted space-time it had been creating around itself. The moon's core suddenly found itself healed of a cancer it had never known it was carrying. On the surface, the only sign of what had occurred was a brief moment when gravity seemed to hiccup, causing everyone present to feel momentarily lighter. The Marv powered down with a sound like reality, sighing in relief. "Target eliminated," Rodriguez reported calmly. "Dimensional stability restored to baseline parameters. No collateral damage detected." The aliens stood in stunned silence, their various cognitive processes struggling to integrate what they had just witnessed. In the span of a single demonstration, everything they thought they knew about warfare, physics, and humanity's place in the galaxy had been completely overturned. Commander Vexitar was the first to recover his composure, though his 4 arms trembled slightly as he spoke. "We need to discuss this with our respective governments immediately. The implications of what we've seen today extend far beyond military applications." "I agree," Harrison nodded, "which is why we've prepared a formal proposal for enhanced cooperation between human forces and the Galactic Defense Force." Dr. Kilnara's form flickered with intense curiosity, despite her obvious unease. "You mentioned that you've been field testing these weapons against Void Reaper incursions. How many encounters have there been?" Chen consulted a datapad, scrolling through information that made several aliens lean forward with interest. "In the past 5 years, human forces have engaged Void Reaper entities 47 times. 39 encounters resulted in complete elimination of the threat. 6 encounters resulted in tactical withdrawal when the enemy proved too large for our current munitions. 2 encounters are classified." "Classified how?" Captain Thecalon demanded. "What could be more significant than successful elimination of Void Reaper forces?" "The encounters where we captured Void Reaper technology instead of destroying it," Harrison replied. "Our engineers are very interested in understanding how their dimensional manipulation works. Some of our newer weapons incorporate principles we've learned from studying their equipment. The revelation that humans were not only destroying Void Reapers, but capturing and reverse engineering their technology sent fresh shockwaves through the assembled representatives. The implications were staggering. If humans could adapt Void Reaper technology to their own purposes, they were potentially on the path to becoming more powerful than anyone in the galaxy had imagined possible. HiveMind Unit 7 released pheromones that translated as deep concern mixed with desperate hope. "Our species has lost 17 worlds to Void Reaper incursions. If human weapons can truly eliminate these threats, we must discuss immediate deployment of joint defense forces. We're willing to share our technology," Harrison said carefully. But it comes with conditions. Human weapons are dangerous in ways that your species aren't equipped to handle. The training requirements alone would take years, and even then, we'd need to maintain strict control over the most advanced munitions. Rodriguez began packing the Marv away in its specially shielded container, a process that required her to manipulate containment fields that existed in more dimensions than the aliens could perceive. Plus, there's the manufacturing issue. Some of our ammunition can only be produced in zero-point energy fields while simultaneously exposed to controlled tiers in space-time. We've only got 3 facilities in human space that can handle that kind of production. We could provide resources for expanding production capabilities, Vextar offered eagerly. Zephyrian industrial technology could accelerate your manufacturing processes significantly. Maybe, Chen said thoughtfully, but you'd need to understand that human weapons aren't just about the technology. They're about the philosophy behind them. We don't build weapons to look impressive or to demonstrate our advanced understanding of physics. We build weapons to kill things that need to be dead. The distinction was subtle, but important. Alien weapons were often designed as much for intimidation and display as for actual combat effectiveness. They were symbols of technological achievement and cultural sophistication. Human weapons, in contrast, were tools with a single purpose: the efficient elimination of threats. Dr. Kilnara's scientific mind was racing as she processed the implications of what she had witnessed. The multidimensional aspects of your weapons technology suggest a fundamental understanding of reality that surpasses our own theoretical frameworks. How did humanity develop such advanced physics without assistance from more established galactic civilizations? We had motivation, Rodriguez said simply. When your home world is under threat, you find ways to push past theoretical limitations. Human scientists have been working under the assumption that any problem can be solved with sufficient application of violence and clever engineering. But the mathematical frameworks alone must be enormously complex, the luminary scientist persisted. Our greatest theorists have spent centuries trying to develop practical applications for multidimensional physics. Harrison smiled grimly. Our mathematicians work faster when there are monsters eating planets. Amazing how quickly theoretical physics advances when the alternative is extinction. The casual reference to near extinction caught the attention of several aliens. Captain Theclon's scales shifted to colors indicating intense curiosity. Are you saying that humanity has faced existential threats before? Our records indicate that Earth has been largely peaceful for the past several decades. That's because we've been dealing with the threats before they reach Earth, Chen explained. The Void Reapers have been probing human space for years, sending scout forces and testing our defenses. We've been intercepting them at the outer edges of our territory. Intercepting them how? Vextar demanded. Void Reaper entities can traverse interstellar distances through dimensional shortcuts that bypass normal space. They appear without warning and disappear just as quickly. We learned to track them, Rodriguez said as she sealed the Marvy's container with locks that existed in several dimensions simultaneously. Human sensor technology has become very good at detecting dimensional distortions. We can usually spot a Void Reaper incursion while it's still forming. The implications were staggering. If humans could detect and intercept Void Reaper forces before they reached their targets, it represented a complete paradigm shift in galactic defense strategies. Most species had resigned themselves to reactive defense, hoping to survive long enough to evacuate when the Reapers appeared. Hivemind Unit 7's mandibles clicked in rapid patterns of extreme agitation. You're describing active interdiction of Void Reaper forces. Our species has never conceived of such tactics because we assumed it was impossible to predict their movements. Nothing's impossible, Harrison replied. Just expensive and dangerous. We've lost 17 ships and 400 good soldiers learning how to hunt Void Reapers effectively. But we've also eliminated threats that would have consumed dozens of worlds if left unchecked. The sacrifice in human lives was sobering, but the strategic implications were revolutionary. A force capable of actively hunting Void Reapers could change the balance of power in the galaxy entirely. Instead of cowering behind defensive barriers and hoping for the best, civilizations could go on the offensive against their greatest threat. Dr. Kilnara's form pulsed with rapid color changes, indicating intense scientific excitement. We must have access to your sensor data. The ability to predict Void Reaper movements would revolutionize our understanding of extra-dimensional physics. We'll discuss data sharing as part of the formal alliance negotiations, Harrison agreed. But understand that some of our detection methods are unconventional. We use a combination of advanced sensors and human intuition that might not work the same way for other species. Commander Vextar activated his communication array, preparing to transmit a priority message to Zephyrian Command. My government will want to begin negotiations immediately. The strategic value of human weapons technology cannot be overstated. Similar scenes were playing out among all the alien representatives as they contacted their respective governments. Within hours, the news would spread throughout galactic civilization. Humanity, the species that had been regarded as primitive and backward, had developed weapons capable of eliminating the galaxy's greatest threat. There's one more thing you should know, Chen said quietly as the aliens prepared to depart. The weapons we demonstrated today? They're not our most advanced technology. They're what we use for routine patrol missions. The revelation hit the assembled representatives like a physical blow. The reality-violating weapons they had just witnessed were considered standard equipment by human forces. The implications of what humanity might possess for major threats were beyond their ability to comprehend. Captain Theklan's voice was barely a whisper. What do you use for serious threats? Rodriguez exchanged glances with her colleagues before answering. That's classified above my clearance level. But I can tell you that our weapons engineers have been very busy over the past few years. As the alien representatives departed to contact their governments, they carried with them the knowledge that everything about galactic politics was about to change. Humanity had emerged from the shadows as a military power unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The irony was not lost on any of them. The species they had mocked for bringing primitive projectile weapons to a modern battlefield had revealed themselves to be the most technologically advanced military force in known space. The old rifles they had laughed at were indeed obsolete, but the minds that had created those rifles had gone on to develop weapons that made their own technology look like children's toys. Within days, formal alliance proposals would begin arriving at human diplomatic stations throughout the galaxy. Species that had previously ignored or patronized humanity would suddenly find themselves desperate for access to weapons that could protect their worlds from extinction. But the humans, with their characteristic pragmatism, would evaluate each proposal carefully. After all, as Chen had noted, human weapons were designed to kill things that needed to be dead. They wanted to make very sure they were giving such tools to the right people. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in the depths of space, Void Reaper entities that had grown accustomed to easy prey were about to discover that one species had decided to fight back with weapons that could follow them anywhere they tried to hide. The age of human military dominance had begun, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple application of superior firepower to problems that had previously been considered unsolvable. And if the past was any indication, humanity was just getting started.